Okay, back here on the video camera again. I want to take this time to talk just a little bit about a couple of things. We're not going to be doing any work today, but we are going to cover a couple of topics that I had some requests about on the YouTube channel there. First, I want to welcome everybody to the channel. I got a whole lot of new subscribers, and of course I spoke about that in the last video, but they just keep coming. That's great. I like to see that, and I've got some comments from new subscribers, and I want to say thank you to all of those folks, and thank you for watching. And I'm glad you enjoyed them enough to comment on them. And I had some questions, so I'm going to cover those as best I can remember. I'm going to cover some of those questions that I had on there in the video. It's a lot easier for me to take a few minutes and answer the questions in the video than it is to try to type them out on the keyboard. And I don't type very well anyhow. So, well, this is the YouTube, so it's supposed to be videos on it. So anyway, I'm going to try to answer some of the questions. I do want to give a shout out to my friend John over there in the UK. He's been with me on the YouTube channel since, oh man, I guess since I started. He's probably one of my first subscribers, and of course I've never met him. He's across the water from us over there, and you know, it'd be great too, but I don't know if I'll ever get to or not. I don't ever imagine me making enough money to go off over there, but if I did, I certainly would get by and see him. But I've noticed a whole bunch of new subscribers from the UK also, so that's great. Just wanted to mention those folks. Take time to watch the videos and comment on them, and let me know that's where they was from. That's great. What we're going to cover here today, a subscriber wanted to know about a sled for his table saw, and had some questions about a router table and stuff. So I'm gonna try to give my thoughts on it. I'll show you the one that I've got here, why it's made like it is, and maybe give you some ideas on making you one. This is for Stan. Stan's a subscriber, and he friended me on Facebook, and we talk every once in a while. Well, we don't talk, we chat a little bit. I guess I call it finger talking. Anyway, we chat once in a while in various formats on Google Plus or Facebook or YouTube or whatever. But anyway, Stan's setting him up shop, and had a couple questions that I'm going to try to give you my opinion on here, and maybe some ideas. So let's get started on that. Keep this thing short as possible. Move the camera over here. Let's see. Now this is my little homemade sled. Maybe I need to move it around here. Show it this way. This is a pretty good size one. I made mine. I do bigger stuff than most. In my table saw, I've got an extra wing. Of course, I'm sure that some of you saw it in some of the other videos. But I've got an extra wing on the left side of my saw. And as I said before, got the shop set up here where mostly do cabinets and bigger stuff like that. I realize that most woodworkers, unless they have a cabinet shop, don't do things as a general rule as big as I do. But that's just out of the design of the cabinets and stuff. So anyway, that made my sled bigger. You know, I can do a bigger piece. I can bring it back here, and I can cut a pretty wide piece. This little simple sled here is made out of MDF. It's 3/4 MDF. And then I just took me a nice straight piece of oak and put that in back here for the fence. And I don't have one on the outside. This just works in one miter slot instead of two. I know you see a lot of sleds that works on both sides, and then your waist, when you cut it off, you've got a place to land. Well, that's really nice, but that would make mine so big that it would be just unwieldy. You know, it's unable to do anything with it. I either saw just a little bit or a whole lot. And if I've got a piece of plywood up here 16, 18, 20 inches wide, and I'm cutting a foot or 2 foot off of it on my setup here, the saw is powerful enough so when I get started, I can just push it right on through and hit cut it, and it just lay down right over there. It don't fall and break because it can cut it fast. If you was having to take your time with a saw with a less motor on it, it might create problems. But anyway, this one works for me. If you're gonna do great big stuff, you know, that you might consider that. But as a rule, unless you're doing cabinets or big stuff like that, you would probably want one that goes on both sides of the blades. So you could lay a piece up there and you wouldn't have to worry about the waste breaking off or falling off or getting caught up in it. You could just work with it that way. If I was going to build one that way, I would use a little bigger piece for my fence. And let's just say that this was a 2-piece. Let's assume a minute this was 2-piece. We'll just lay this up here for demonstration. So our saw kerf is going to be in the middle here, so this is a 2-piece. Well, what I would do would use me a bigger piece for my fence that would go all the way out. And then I would cut me an additional piece. You could taper the ends of it or whatever out. Now this is just for example. I wouldn't necessarily, these are some scrap 2x4s that I had laying here. Wouldn't necessarily use that, but that would be okay. But if these went out like this, if this was your fence, and you had your saw kerf here, then you could put a piece on the top. You could shape the edges of it or whatever, and you could put it on both sides. That makes for a really nice sled. And it keeps your waste on a piece, your stock on a piece, and you can work it back and forth. And then you can put 2 miter slots in it, and that's the way it would do that. So, and then I set my dado blade up. You can cut it with a dado blade, or you can cut with a router. If you've got a 3/4 bit and it comes out to be in true 3/4. But instead of trying to glue and screw mine on there, I take my piece of MDF, which is the bottom of the sled, and I set it up here on the table saw with my dado blade, and then I cut me a 3/4 inch groove, about 3/8 of an inch or so deep into my MDF. And then I cut me a piece of hardwood. This one here, I used oak on it. I think this is a piece of white oak. But you could use any kind of hardwood. Rock maple would be good. Oak works good. But anyway, I cut a piece of that to where it just did fit in the miter slot. And it just did fit in the dado that I cut here. They wind up both being the same. So I done a little measuring, and I got the height right where you go up in here and sit down in the miter slot and not hold it up off the table. So I glued that in there, and that's how I set mine, instead of trying to measure it out and go with a square. If you've got your table saw set up good and you've got a good setting on your fence, and you can cut your piece square here, you know, if you make a square, then you can put a dado in here in the right place. So cut one, I cut my insert and put in it, and then I've got it sliding here working good. If it's a little heavy, and it might be a good thing to leave it a little heavy, you can always take and run your little sandpaper on the edges of it real fine and smooth it up. Put some wax on it, and the MDF will slide good on the table if that's what you decide to use. Anyway, I left it a little long, so when I do that, turn it back around here and drop it in the miter slot, bring the saw blade up, get the saw running, and then just cut it off. Well, turn the camera over, but just cut it off, and that gives you a 0 clearance with it there, with the blade, and it never changes, because even though I changed the blade, if it went to a thicker blade, it'd be on that side of it. The spindle's right here, and then this is as close as it'll get. So I had a question from another viewer. Wanted to know about a little bit about my background and how I got into woodworking. I did make mention on the shop video tour that I was a mechanic. Done a lot of things. I don't know, I've always been pretty good at doing stuff with my hands. When I grew up, I grew up and my dad and his brother and his dad, my grandpa, they was always pretty good with their hands, and they worked hard all their life. And we was pretty poor growing up. We didn't have a whole lot. And of course that went on back. Dad had even less, and his dad had even a whole lot less. So I consider myself fortunate. But anyway, when I was growing up young, we didn't have a whole lot of money. Nobody made much money here where we live, and we still don't as far as that goes. But if we wanted something, we either had to make it or do without, because nobody had the money to go buy. So in turn, that left us doing a lot of things that's just get by to have it, But anyhow, my dad, he mechanic for years, and I learned it from a young age. When I got big enough to move and go what was going on, I was cleaning parts and scraping gaskets and doing mechanic work on cars, and I could overhaul an engine and take one in and out of a car and do all kinds of work on a car before I even had a driver's license. And I learned that off of my dad and his brother. That's what they did for a living. And my grandfather, he never had a wood shop per se like this, and he never done anything as a business. But I can remember, and it seems strange to be able to remember something that far back, but I can remember the first woodworking thing that we did. Me and my grandfather, we built a rabbit gum. And I'm sure there's people all over the world watch this that don't know what a rabbit gum is, but it's a rabbit trap, and we used to eat a lot of rabbit. But it's basically just a square box. But anyway, that's my first memory of woodworking, and he didn't have anything but some hand tools, some hand planes, and hand saw. But we made those things, and I thought it was just neat. So that got me interested. In high school, I took shop. Back when I went to high school, we had a woodworking shop out there. Of course, we had a mechanical shop where they teach automotive mechanics and welding and that sort of thing we got in high school. I don't know if they even still have those now or not, but I already knew how to mechanic, so I took woodworking shop, and man, I loved it. But I never, from there on out, I never did have the funds or the time to be able to mess with woodworking other than just at a hobby level. So I mechanicked, and I've done that for several years, and right up till when I quit mechanicking, I had an automotive machine shop here in town. I ran it for 2 years. So I was used to machining stuff. It was just metal instead of wood, but that was something that I enjoyed. Enjoyed doing that, but finally sold that and got out of it. Then I started. I was able to. That gave me time to get into the woodworking thing. So started working on the shop and collecting tools, and it's been over a period of many years. It took me 10 years to get the tools that you see here in the shop, and on the shop tour video there, it's took me that long to acquire all this stuff. But anyhow, and I do make a living with it. The viewer was questioning me, or had a question about it. He said he thought that I did, but I do make a living here in the wood shop. Sometimes it's hard. It's always tough in the wintertime, and this time of year it's always kind of slow anyway. So I build other stuff other than cabinets. I don't never seem to get too many cabinets jobs going in the winter. I guess people can't get out, and then around the holidays they don't spend their money on stuff like that. So, but he'll get back to maybe some resemblance of normal there in the spring of the year. But that's how I make a living. So I hope that answers all those questions. This top here, of course, this router table here is homemade. I made every bit of it, with the exception of the fence and the router lift. And he was talking about using a Woodpecker's router lift, I think. Excellent choice. About any of the router lifts would be great. I've got some Woodpecker stuff. My drill press table and fence system is Woodpecker's and stuff like that. And that stuff is great. So not a commercial for them, but if you're considering buying their stuff and you question about it, it's top quality stuff made here in the USA, and it's some really good stuff. I cut out for this, and then I took two of those pieces of plywood, And mine's big now. My table is a whole lot larger than normal. Because when I made this thing, I was doing moldings on it and that sort of thing. And, you know, sometimes I get a big door up here, whatever. But mine's a lot bigger than normal. So it's got 2 pieces of plywood that's 7/8 of an inch thick, sandwiched together. I got a vacuum press, so I glued that thing down and I put it in the vacuum press, put it in the bag and let the glue dry. But you wouldn't have to. You could screw it together, glue it and use a whole bunch of clamps on it. Whatever done. You need more than 3/4 of an inch. The thicker the better as far as the durability and the flex goes. You don't want it to flex if at all possible. So but you can take two pieces of 3/4 inch plywood, glue it together, and that makes for a good router top, for a good base for it. Now this one here has got sides coming up on either side of the router. So and I left this where it will come off. See, it'll come up, raise up. You can take it off. But I just done that for a specific reason. But it's good and supported underneath. So if you have a normal size router table, you wouldn't probably need that much support. You know, you're probably going to be fine. But what I found, and after a whole bunch of study, that the main thing is what you put on that plywood. This is Formica. It's just pure white Formica that I went up to the hardware store and bought a sheet of. Now when I built this tabletop, I put Formica on both sides. They say that stabilizes it a whole lot more. Keeps it from bowing. I don't know, but I certainly had this one a long time and I've never had any problem. It's just as flat now as it was when I built it. So I put that piece of Formica on both sides of it. And you put that on it and you can put some wax on it. I used just a regular old floor paste wax like people used to use when they waxed their floors. Just take that thing, rub it on there just like you're waxing a car, and then rub it back off after it dries, and it's just as slick as roller bearings when you get done after you do that. So that works out really nice. So I would recommend if you was going to do your router top that you have some kind of Formica on top of it. If you're going to build one that you're going to keep, now you can make a pretty nice router table and put some plywood or some MDF on it or something like that and wax it. Maybe put some clear on it and then wax it real good, and that works just fine. But if you're gonna build a router table to keep and use for the duration, not something that's just temporary but you're planning on using for a long time, consider putting the Formica on it or something like it, Koran or whatever, some kind of hard man-made substance on top of it that you can wax and it'll be durable. And I found the Formica be extremely good for that. I'll come over here and show this one more time and talk just a little bit about it. This is the extension I put on the dado saw. I went to the local big box store up here, and what this is a countertop. I bought a 4-foot section of countertop. I guess somebody didn't like the color or something, but they had it on sale. I think I bought that whole 4-foot section for about 20 bucks or something. You might look around at some of those stores. You may see a piece that's damaged or cracked or have something wrong with it. You might be able to buy it cheap. But you know, it had the drip edge. It didn't have a backsplash. It was on it too. So I brought it home. I cut that backsplash off. I just took my skill saw and cut the thing off. Then turned it over and put it on the table saw and got my smooth edge. And that gave me the size that I want. So I cut it down. Then I took and glued me some plywood to the bottom of this. This is on that chipboard, I call it. Looks like sawdust has been glued together. Makes for a pretty good base. It's pretty stable, but it ain't the toughest in the world. So I took that and then glued me in another 3/4 inch piece of plywood on the bottom of that. And then I made my sides out of maple here, more just to hide all that ugliness and make it steady where I could come in here and put it on the table saw as an extension. But this is just maple on the sides here and rounded off the corners to fit this. But that's what this one is. And this is more of a normal size, probably, router table. May even be a little bigger this way because I like it just a little bigger, but this would be more of a normal size thing. So this works out great. Like I said, you know, you could probably get you some if you look around on the cheap. And it does great for router top. See, it's already on there and it's rounded over here for a nice edge you can walk up against. But if you can buy it already on that board, and then you can just add you some plywood to it and make it for a nice router top. So I hope that gives you some ideas there, Stan. I don't know where it did or not, but I hope it did. And if you have any more questions, Lord, just ask them. I'll do my best to answer, and maybe some of the other viewers out there can chime in with some of their stations or something, and see if they've got any better ideas. I'm always looking for that better idea. But these here's work for me, but they may not work for everybody. Like I said, and somebody may have a better idea. So if they do, speak up here and be heard, and we'll get my friend Stan there with the best setup possible for the least amount of money. That's always good. So I guess that answers about all the questions. We're going to get back on another project soon here. Went and measured today for another cabinet job. Not a huge one, but just be some storage cabinets. But anyway, that's always a good thing this time of year, even for a small set of cabinets. So maybe we'll get that bid and get on that project. Anyway, thanks for watching.